Reading from my book, Pieces of Eight, a chapter on Orbitron excerpt. A quiet year passed on Orbitron. Lena Loop and General Gua coordinated construction and defense activities across the outer bounds of the galaxy from planets populated with human beings. Missions of exploration and habitation started to the nearest neighboring galaxies. Recon missions in the inner galaxy, where most of the expanding Aristarch Empire was located, reporting on opposition force advance. Surveys of Aristarch actions and taking of human life it regarded as nothing more flush-worthy poops for elimination from the galaxy, except as they could fuel fulfillment of Aristarch goals. What neither the general or Lena Loop knew was that the Aristarchs already were in the process of relocating a captured FTL-2 tech unit from Synthawim to Coronation, and that in as little as 2 years the Aristarchan forces would easily be able to deploy military forces, as well as the subtle system drug, to the free human settlements of the outer bands. In the second year since her arrival on Orbitron, Carla Femme Fibbentrop asked to reunite her echo mind with her organic brain at home on Castor, located a few thousand light years away, midway through the primary galactic habitation zone. I went with her and observed the process whereby she reunited and took on the flesh of completely human form, although keeping the inner hyperstructure that would allow it to be shed and reconfigured if necessary. With her human flesh and standard organic structure, Carla Femme Fibbentrop was a stunningly beautiful figure. And why not take on a beautiful appearance, as it was all quickly remedial human form and superficiality in some ways, since beauty really is only skin deep, as any survivor of third-degree facial burns can attest. We returned to Orbitron after touring Castor's vast jungles and teeming biological reserves. They were populated originally with earthian animal and plant life that had been set loose to naturally grow and evolve for tens of thousands of years within advanced human structures for living, keeping safely apart from interfering with the human progress of the global total species genomic interactive paradigm for a change, unlike the decimation of life systems on elite Aristarchan worlds that were reduced to inorganic pleasure computers, though sometimes with saturation, solar capture, surface totalization for cheap and nearly inexhaustible power supplies. At Orbitron one day, while chatting over coffee at a table overlooking the extra-dimensional core extrusions in the center of the world, Carla brought up the subject of her researches on Gazm. It was toward the end of my investigation of the destruction of Gazm that I found a record of a traveler from Synthawim who had arrived with what I now understand was an FTL-2 facility. It also mentioned that the same traveler had contacted top-level humans of Diaphragm and the Shivella there. I found that interesting. It definitely is a potential threat vector, Carla. Diaphragm was my home world before I was brought to Orbitron from the main diaphanous moon Enchilada. In fact, this worries me a bit. The humans of Diaphragm are not totally well informed about the nature of the Aristarchs and are subject to Aristarchan control. The threat to a working FTL-2 unit that might in any way enable the Aristarchs to seize FTL-2 tech would be quite a threat to free human life everywhere in the galaxy. With the alarming news, given a year after the fact at that, we made our way to let General Gua know of the potential disastrous change. At the Central Control Concourse, General Gua was busy conferring with defense contractors and political liaisons on the outer ring of the work in progress of forming a communications and observation perimeter for human-populated free worlds. His daughter Wolfman was busy at a workplace station nearby, one with a view of the extrusion and magnification of the hidden extra dimensions roiling in a whirlpool. Lena Loop walked in and sat down next to the 9-year-old Wolfman Gua and asked her, "What are you playing, Wolfman?" "It's the billionaire card deck. The girls of Orbitron have a deck of all the human billionaires of the free Silky Way. There are just 200,000, you know, and we try to guess what their next business moves will be." Lena Loop was a quality instructor at all levels except for some kind of postdoc research for non-human postage stamps of lost galaxies. She asked Wolfman, "Do you know why there are only 200,000 billionaires in the entire free galaxy?" Wolfman stopped gaming for a minute and looked at Lena and said, "No." "Then let me explain, Wolfman. Long ago in the original Earth, a very bright young apprentice of the philosopher David Hume invented modern economics. Hitherto, economics largely was limited to trade practices under imperial rule. Human beings have an original sin of being unlimited consumers, seeking to devour what fundamentally is energy to let them grow. Smarter human beings recognize that mankind has a spiritual nature that is primary even to the fleshly and voracious drives of a physical body that, should it be awakened through the divine grace of the Lord Jesus Christ. Young Adam Smith, the bright new economist, created the idea of liberalization of trade, such that the imperial powers would not decree it and should instead allow citizens to conduct free trade. Centuries later, after the world economy had progressed and new technology allowed planetary communications and trade as fast as a computer could process data, wealth became concentrated and began to buy up the free market. In time, the free market evolved to become once more a de facto imperial rule that did not allow political free thought that might upset the economic system. So, Lena, the free trade evolved itself back into captivity to imperials. Why didn't the ordinary people dissent and reapportion through taxation and corporate legal forms, some way to keep free trade from being dominated by concentrated wealth people and the corporations they owned? Eventually, they did, Wolfman, on another planet where survivors learned the lessons from the overweening drive for consumption that leads to imperial subjectivity for the human race, can destroy the wonderful environment of the earth, as it too was overconsumed to the point of becoming unfit to sustain life. Wolfman grew a little more concerned with the ancient story that portrayed the destruction of the original physical and social environment of the first planet of humankind in its long history. Do you think there is a lesson to be learned here, Wolfman? That left unchecked, the human drive to consume is like a virus on a planet's people and ecosphere, something like leprosy progressively moving across a body until it is consumed? Yes, something like that, Wolfman. Later, humanity realized, after reflection upon its disasters, that a philosophical value system, an axiology for a realistic economic system, needed to regard wealth as a function of the general well-being of all of the people of the culture. Rich people may be allowed, yet not so rich as to make the possession of wealth equal to the possession of political power. Billionaires in your deck are just a tiny percent of the trillions and trillions of humans living over the free expanse of the galaxy. They too realize that the security of all can be no greater than the security and wealth of the least of humanity. All of humanity are brought to exist within an effective constructive range of inventive and contemplative existence. The extremes of concentrated wealth and poverty, such as the Aristarchs and other imperialists use, are absent from a free human society. Lena said, "Let me show you a new game, Wolfman. I think you'll like it." "What is it?" asked Wolfman as Lena brought it up in a new window. As you can see from the banner above, the Clint Westwood character dressed as Chief Seattle is called Future Fracker. It's a way of modeling human ecological economic histories on the geographies of planets historically and discovering the effects of ecological economic systems on the future of a given world covering. In the example world, human beings have crossed the Bering Strait before the sea level rises and make their way south to Mexico, while some stop to colonize Puget Sound in the future Washington state. The boundaries of the future state of Washington are marked in orange, and the naturally healthy ecosphere is green. Human settlements are red, and industrial activity blue. As human activities infect the green and spread, the newly dead green regions become black. What happens if they become white? That's a question better answered way down the road in the future. White occurring generally means nuclear wipeout, or worse, through though rarely it heralds utopia. We aren't using white too much in the colors of future fract, since the problem is more of civil war, economic consequences of ecological and economic policy choices. Clint Westwood as Chief Seattle sure looks angry. Chief Seattle was grim. He appeared at the industrial pollution expansion site as a groundbreaking ceremony and ribbon cutting for the expansion of the industrial pollution factory, with a vast new asphalt parking lot was about to go ahead. Chief Seattle's appearance differed from that of the crowd of sycophants and politicians gathered around the stage, and speaker making the great pompous speech about jobs and progress. Thus the speaker looked at Chief Seattle. Seattle looked back and said, "Do you feel lucky, punk? Go ahead. Cut. Make my day." His hand poised, ready to draw a lightsaber. And well he should, great actor as he was at 98. The ecosphere of the state of Washington died at a regular pace as unplanned human sprawl consumed and devoured ecological health, instead of concentrating human population centers and retaining a healthy wilderness with land set aside for farming. The entire state ecosphere was consumed by a human economic equivalent of flesh-eating bacteria. Mammal life disappears from land, and even sea as killer whale pods disappear into history. Salmon streams are converted to drainage ditches and sewers. Asphalt and concrete paths grow all over the state to transport fossil fuel farting machines that warm the sky and squash animals under tire. Enough of the intro game. I want to show you the principles of qualitative modeling of economic and ecological position initial start locations, quantitative analysis of the natural resources of a region and if they are renewable or not, and the way that Immanuel Kant's moral categorical imperative should shape the choice of reproductive ecological economic systems through fractal analysis too. Modeling the reproductive value in ecological economy relies on the way it may be subjugated with growth. Each ecological economy is a Mandelbrot formula with constants that can reproduce itself, yet nothing more. It can burn up or conserve resources, yet will be nothing else, never progressive. For progress, the Mandelbrot value need be combined with another fractal formula, and finding two fractals that may be combined without destroying one another isn't easy. Yet the value of being able to combine two ecological economic systems that allow growth and techno-social advance is so high that heterosexual marriage of ecological methods is requisite for anyone with a realistic idea of mankind's place in nature and the universe. Why don't single fractal economies work? Wolfman, the best explanation might be a simple analogy to waveforms that are in sync or not. Heterogeneous waveforms could virtually fill up a geographic region as yin and yang composites comprise a whole, and in our ecological economic system actually create new ecological economic life. On the other hand, same fractal waveforms, even those with different Mandelbrot values, can combine destructively without conjugation or producing anything new. Instead, they double the power of their self-game waveforms, continuing whatever dysfunctional ecology's economic pattern of gross mindless consumerism is present, annihilating biological life and, of course, human freedom. You should try to use the game to create your own fractal worlds and values, conjugating those with other oppositely signed fractals to generate new ecological economic system values occasionally. Not too many or too often, as you will overwhelm carrying capacity of the host worlds, and even theoretically that of the entire galaxy. Kant's categorical imperative for moral effectiveness informs us that no rule for self-conduct should be made that could not reasonably be applied to everyone as a universal moral law. With that premise in mind, we may consider if our social, ecological, economic practice, if reproduced at large scale, would act positively or destructively concerning ecospheric health, and then to what extent it need be modified for use. General Dwight and Carla Amphibitrop arrived breathlessly. General Carla has revealed information letting us infer that the Aristarchs, in a worst-case scenario, may have obtained an FTL-2 unit from Synthawim. General Gua, grim with the news, said, "Lena, evacuate the children to the small Chaldean moon. We cannot afford to be unprepared for a sudden attack, unlikely though it may be." The general remembered the Battle of Stygia in the inner system long ago, when an uneasy truce between the aristocracy and free humans was suddenly shattered with a devastating surprise attack on the cold planet of Bitterwurst. Bitterwurst was a peaceful civilian outlier of the free remaining human worlds not dominated by the aristocracy. Royalty is blasphemy against man and God. No human save the Lord Jesus Christ is implicitly of more worth or greater than another. And Jesus was born in a stable. Call the counselors of the FTL-2 technology to survey all possible points of approach the aristocracy may be able to exploit to enter the outer bounds of the galaxy. Dispatch an FTL recovery team to Synthewim to retrieve the FTL-2 tech or destroy it in case it hasn't fallen into the hands of the Aristarchs, and to determine how much time it would take for the Aristarchs to relocate the FTL-2 tech from Synthewim to Coronation, in the event that the self-conceited and distrustful Aristarchs aren't willing to allow such an important transport tool to exist beyond their immediate personal control. John and Carla, stay with me for now, as I develop a more full and synergistic battle plan. The devil may have already dispatched lysing vectors at us. General Guan looked at me for a moment with something resembling a smirk, and he said, Carla, with your physiological adaptation, you can do without this, yet for you, John, I think an exobot would be in order. An exobot, sir. The general ordered an exobot fitting to appear, and within minutes a servo floater delivered one. This is how it works, John. Your brain and body will be put into a very low metabolic state with cold, while your brain activity is amplified with sensors and relays in the exobot, forming a substitute for your lowered brain activity workload. The exobot will slow your aging process to a small fraction of its normal pace, yet compensate for the lowered function as you may continue with an active mind and sensations of the world that the exobot detects. General Gua watched as the exobot's self-animating retarded AI unit brought it up off the servo floater to walk toward me, open itself and wrap around my body, enveloping me completely after my clothing had dropped off with deactivation of magnetic fasteners. Immediately, the exobot AI began linking itself to my thought as it sealed itself around my head. I felt a mild jolt at the enhancement of my senses amplified through the exobot. My body also felt the exoskeletal power of motivation and sensation kick in to approximate my own normal physical sensations. As the temperature of the suit began to drop, a mild anti-shock drug was administered to let me experience the decreasing temperature that sank far below freezing without distress. In a few minutes, my body had effectively fallen nearly asleep, and dominant with the exobot taking over the physical role of the human body that my mind rode within. It provided physical sensations to my brain that encountered the exobot external sensations, modeling, replicating my own sensations if my own body wasn't dominant. The exobot is quite a bit stronger than your usual human body, John, the general said. You will find your senses may also be increased at will should you decide it worthwhile to do so, including touch and smell, hearing and sight. What about taste, General? How quickly you've discovered one of the weak spots to the exobot. I hate to tell you this, but there won't be any cheeseburgers or coffee with milk and sugar for you while in physically suspended animation. Your metabolism is very, very low and slow. Occasionally, a few compounds will enter to maintain from nutrient stores without going through the usual processing system. Carla, we have a dumb exobot for you that will provide the same features as John's standard XB without the brain cooling. If you want to use one of those, it would let you transit the void just as well, in addition to other environments adverse to human physiology that may present to you down the road. Yes, General, thanks. That might be useful. I had a question for the General to ask after Carla replied and waited for the appearance of a semi-XB. General, may I ask a question of you? There's quite a bit about the universe that I don't understand. Of course, John, reanimation doesn't provide complete data learned from your former existence. The expansion or hyperinflation of the universe, sir, how did that happen? I'm not a physical cosmologist, John, yet I'll tell you what I know of the subject as I understand it. I will also send knowledge units to your XB in order that you may learn at high speed. The inflation occurred in a virgin region of the universe. Gravity had not yet formed to slow down energy and convert it into mass. Energy was recognized by Einstein to equal mass times the speed of light squared, yet that was a nominal constraint for a formula that was necessarily required to define energy within the context of a non-vergent space-time paradigm of a deterministic future. What energy is before it is bound to space-time's mass is difficult to say. It may have no form at all that is comparable to any quantum form such as a string or membrane. Its natural extent may be greater than the dimensions of the universe defined with space-time. Energy released from singularity before standard forces exists has no light speed limitations. Einstein's formulaic paradigm is surpassed. E equal mc squared may not be valid in the absence of space-time. It was created in the absence of space-time, that energy expanded, creating its space-time as it went in itself. What is gravity? Gravity is a process wherein mass is embedded within space-time. Apparently, energy at the inflaton for an instant had no tie to space-time before gravity associated the newly appeared energy to it, starting the curvature of space-time and formation of mass. Gravity is a concatenated phenomenon of virtual particle superpositions of mass quanta entangling itself in static states. That warps space, in effect, as static mass ensnares emergent field phenomena such as photons traveling through. With quantum computing instructions, the entangled static mass of virtual particles can be decohered, releasing energy and mass explosively transforming black holes into white. Incidentally, John, there are about 350 billion planets in the Milky Way, and of those, somewhere around 10 billion have been brought into use by humanity free of the Aristarchs. There's a halo of energy surrounding the galaxy, 4 major spiral arms of stars and mass swirling around and being drawn to a great black hole at the center of the galaxy named Sagittarius A, after its apparent location from the ancient Earth that was located about 26,000 light years from the galactic center. I understand the galaxy is about 100,000 light years in diameter. Yes, so it is. And something else you might benefit from understanding is the nature of mass in regard to space-time and the pieces of 7 or 8 former universes. Mass is embedded in space-time dimensions and therein locked in a particular direction consistent with the dimensions of the universe. Black holes have an infinite capacity for compacting and compounding reduction of mass within themselves because the dimensions are themselves infinite within a black hole. So, although mass is bound to space-time creating curvature and all mass is duplicating that, creating concatenated curvature and the power of space-time curvature, the actual gravitational force doesn't increase and remains a constant? Correct. And you may know that gravity is also limited to acting at the speed of light. I believe the reacceleration of the rate of expansion of the universe ascribed to dark energy is actually a renormalization of energy entering into non-space-time holes in space-time that arise as the finite energy of the universe expanding in space-time is concentrated with gravity, leaving non-space-time holes or bubbles in an ultra-fast catching phenomena in the wake of galactic formation. For something greater than energy existed, something more subtle and less granular, at once more refined and without waves or variegations, before energy could slow to mass and lower more steady state orbits closer to the temperature of absolute zero, it must first be and become. When the universe was without form and void, it was without energy, without a shape of a string or a singularity. Before a membrane began to exist, nothing rippled upon the face of the deep. When a word was spoken and light entered the universe, something greater than energy, an idea at best comparable to spirit, entered to travel faster than light. For light was itself a nearly massless wave particle. It would appear within a field, and the pre-energetic fact was faster than those fields, including electromagnetic and gravitational, that would exist as the ethereal primal fact of a specific and finite quantity slowed after entering space-time, with field symmetry, breaking logic into evolutions of phases, taking directions and protocols in the mysterious volume of infinite dimensions known as space. Time implicitly appeared within the energy and mass of space, providing a relativistic space-time field. The field was relative yet finite. Mass drew other mass into itself through the convenience of attaching itself to space-time as an apparent phenomena of virtual particle entangling at the speed of light a host of nearly massless subatomic orbital quanta, reshaping space-time behavior and world lines a mass subatomic quanta with implicit inanimate logic, the superposition of entangled particles, balanced accounts, even while all mass drawn unto itself, closed space-time about itself as black holes. Under tremendous pressure, within strong gravitational fields of warping space-time, all mass yielded energy that became virtually infinitely hot and simultaneously infinitely energetic, and compacted without limit in what might somewhat realistically be thought of as the singular point of hell at the end of any black hole, of sufficient size that would, in its heart of darkness, collect with all other black holes growing from the finite initial mass given for the universe into a black hole enshrouded in its own warp, space-time seeking to escape its own infinite hell. It was a perfect containment facility for those lost and without regard for their immortal souls that are another name for spirit. The spirit was known unto God and given a new name upon recollection and resurrection after the judgment of the dead. In the black hole, time has stopped at the singularity, yet time also continues apparently, subject forever within the contradictory, infinitely high temperature existing below absolute zero, when motion has stopped and all mass was converted into something beyond energy and time, yet far less and of a different character than the greater than energy that appeared before first light of the universe, so many billions of years before, from a certain perspective. In the meanwhile, before the evident ends of time, in sundry black holes appeared that would combine into one, if given the time and opportunity. The trillions of galaxies that existed and might be regarded as stages in the course of life's way were beset by another problem that was already making itself known to the humans living at the edge of the Silky Way galaxy, where they had believed themselves safely beyond the reach of Aristarchs and sundry other urban evils of the interior universe. The problem arose with what later was named the species of 8, Orbitron. General Gua received news from scouts returning from Synthwim that an Elf-Tail unit was indeed missing. He had assigned Carl F.M. Fibbentrop and John Dwight to an intensive course briefing on the status of human settled worlds of the galaxy's major and minor spiral arms. The galaxy was itself rotating, dragging the spiral arms with it while they slowly moved in toward the business ends of the bar-shaped field to the vast galactic central black hole. Gua felt it necessary to recall him to his presence to share the news. He did so, and was immediately apprised of more news. When Dwight and Fibbentrop presented themselves before him, he wondered what the Aristarchs might be up to with the new-to-them FTL tool. Isn't too hard to guess, conquest, yet what way might they go about that? Any ideas? I said, I believe that they might attack the spiral arms from the outward in. While we were studying the data about the settlements, I noticed that the outer defenses that are most remote from the Aristarchs were the least well defended, in the mistaken belief that they were the most secure. With FTL-2 distance communications able to attack anywhere in the galaxy reasonably quickly, that belief is quite wrong. Sure, John. If I were the Aristarchs, I too would attack from the outside in and consolidate toward the center, driving the opposition forces, us, toward the zone of avoidance and the death that lies therein. In fact, I've just received a report of scout drones being observed at the extremities of the spiral arms closest to the galactic halo. Evidently, the Aristarchs are already mapping out our locations and force composition to battle. Of course, we cannot know exactly how the Aristarch force will attack. Coronation is about 26,000 light years from Sagittarius A, and we are about 30,000. It is necessary to defend our inner lines closest to Coronation as well as the outer. Though the distal worlds are reporting in, I would like you two to travel to the western edge of the galaxy for first-hand observations. All right, General, that's fine with me. What about you, Carla? I wouldn't possibly miss the opportunity to survey the state of the outer worlds at the edge. I asked the General, where to, sir? I will let you take your pick based on the recent intensive course material you have hopefully completed studying, yet I suggest you select a planet with a good view of the large Magellanic Cloud, for it may be in that direction should things turn sour beyond redemption, that we would need to exodus for the survival of the free human race.